colloidal state. Actually, colloidal solutions are the solutions which are intermediate to the true solution and suspension. These are homogeneous mixture, but the particles are larger than the particles of solution, but they are smaller than the particles of suspension. So they are intermediate. So in this video we are going to discuss about the preparation, properties and different type of uses of colloidal solutions and many more. So let's start. Colloidal state. So now we are going to this study about colloidal state. So first question is that actually what is colloidal state? Colloidal state is also referred as sometimes colloidal solution or colloidal sol. Okay, we are very well aware of the term mixture. What is mixture? Mixture is something in which actually one substance, two or more substances are mixed together. If they are mixed they are mixed homogeneously, then it is known as, if they are mixed uniformly, they are known as homogeneous mixture, and if they are not mixed uniformly, they are known as heterogeneous mixtures. And actually mixtures are classified in three groups actually. The first one is solution, which is a homogeneous mixture, and next one is suspension, which is heterogeneous mixture. Now what is the difference between these two is that in solution the particles are totally dissolved, and they are dissolved uniformly, they are mixed uniformly, and they are not visible through eyes, and they are homogeneous mixture. In suspension actually the particles or the components are not uniformly mixed and we can see them separate. Like this is the example. If we talk about solution, the example is solution of or mixture of sugar in water. We know sugar dissolves properly in water, and we cannot say by just looking at the mixture that which is sugar and which part is water. It is a uniform solution of sugar in water. But suspension, if I mix or if I try to dissolve let's say some sand in water, it will not dissolve and it will remain as suspension. We can see clearly with our eyes that the particles of soil or sand are suspended in the water. So what is the difference basically at minute level? That in solution the solute particles are, or the particles of the solid are very small. They are smaller than 1 nanometer. They are smaller than 1 nanometer. They are so small that they are not visible at all. In solution the particles are smaller than 1 nanometer. While in case of suspension the particles are very large and they are very easily visible through eyes, and they are even larger than 1000 nanometer. Suspension particles are larger than 1000 nanometer, and in between these two, 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer, there lies another state which is known as colloidal state. So colloids are intermediate to solutions and suspension. Their particles are larger than solution but smaller than suspension. So this is known as a colloidal system in which the particles are in the range of 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer diameter. Okay, and obviously as in solution we had two parts, solvent and solute. Similarly in colloids also we have two parts. The one is a dispersion medium, another one is dispersed particles. So dispersed particles and dispersion medium. Actually the one which is present in larger amount is known as dispersion medium, while the one which is present in minute amount is known as dispersed particles. So the particles in colloidal solutions are thus larger particles and are referred to as colloidal particles. They are larger than solutions. Although colloidal particles are larger, yet they are not large enough to be seen with naked eyes, but they can be seen with the help of an ultra microscope. And colloidal solution can pass through ordinary filter paper but not through an animal membrane, special type of filter paper. Again, we have just talked about that there are two phases. First is dispersion medium or dispersion medium, and next is dispersed particles or dispersed phase. So there are actually two components. This is dispersion medium is just homologous to, we can say, solvent part, and we can say that this is solute part. So dispersion phase, the phase which is dispersed or scattered through the dispersion medium is called dispersed phase or discontinuous phase, while the phase in which the scattering is done is called dispersion medium or continuous phase. Now, classification of colloids based on physical state. Okay, if dispersion phase is that, there are three possibilities, that the dispersion phase is solid, or it is liquid, or it is gas. If dispersed phase is solid and dispersion medium is liquid, it is known as a sol, and the examples are gold sol, mud, and FeOH3 sol. If the dispersed phase is solid and dispersion medium is also solid, then it is known as solid sol, and examples are gems, ruby, glass, minerals. If dispersed phase is solid, dispersion medium is gas, it is known as aerosols, example is smoke. If dispersed phase is liquid or dispersion medium is solid, that means liquid is dispersed in solid, it is a gel, example is curd, cheese. And if liquid is dispersed in liquid, it is known as emulsion, examples are milk, water in benzene, cream, etc. And if liquids are dispersed in gas, that means dispersion phase is liquid and dispersion medium is gas, it is known as liquid aerosols, examples are clouds and fogs. And if gas is dispersed in solid, it is solid foam like lava. And if gas is dispersed in liquid, it is known as foam like froth of beer and pipe cream, etc. Next is classification of colloids based on nature of interaction. The first is lyophobic colloids. Lyophobic colloids are those colloids which do not have affection for water. Lyophobic means water hating or water phobia. The substances which when mixed with suitable liquid, that is dispersion medium, readily form colloidal solutions are called lyophobic colloids, and the sols thus formed are called lyophilic. Okay, the first one is lyophilic actually colloid. The lyophilic colloids are the substances which when mixed with a suitable liquid or which is dispersion medium readily form colloidal solutions are called lyophilic colloids or intrinsic colloids, and thus sols formed are known as lyophilic sols. Lyophilic means water loving. Okay, lyophilic sols are stable and do not get precipitated easily. In fact, they are self-stabilized, that means they do not require any stabilizing agent to preserve them. So, lyophilic sols are water loving as the name suggests, and we can say they are actually solvent loving and they are stable, they do not get precipitated easily, and it can easily be formed by mixing the dispersion medium, the dispersed phase with dispersion medium. We easily mix them and we get the sol. Okay, next is lyophobic sols. Lyophobic sols are those sols actually which are not water loving, they are water phobic actually, they are solvent phobic actually, they are not solvent loving, and the substances which do not pose much affinity for the dispersion medium or solvent, they do not readily pass into sol state when mixed with the medium are called hydrophobic colloids or extrinsic colloids or lyophobic colloids. That means they are not water loving, they are not solvent loving, they are not dispersion medium loving, and they can thus not easily formed by just mixing them together. Lyophobic sols are relatively less stable as compared to lyophilic sols, and they are easily precipitated on addition of small amount of an electrolyte followed by heating. Now, classification of colloids based on the type of particles or dispersed phase. They are either classified as multi-molecular colloids, and it is when large number of atoms or small molecules of a substance combine together in dispersion medium to form aggregates having large size or they having size in colloidal range. The colloidal solution thus formed are called multi-molecular colloids. That means they are not a single particle, actually it is a group of particles which come together to form a particle which is large enough to fall in a colloidal range. That means let's say we have particles which are very smaller than as compared to 1 nanometer, but then number of particles come together to form a big giant particle which comes in size range of 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. That means in the colloid range, that it would be known as multi-molecular colloid, because the colloid particle is formed by a combination of many or multi particles. And the species actually or atoms or molecules constituting the dispersed particle in multi-molecular colloids are held together by van der Waals force. That means those particles which are coming together to form a large particle are held together by van der Waals forces. Next is again macromolecular colloids. Certain substances form large molecules whose dimensions are comparable to those of colloidal particles. That means only one molecule is enough to fall in the range of a colloid, and such molecules are very high, they have very high molecular masses and termed as macromolecules. When such substances are dispersed in suitable dispersion medium, the resulting colloidal solution are known as macromolecular colloids. And thus in macromolecular colloids, the dispersed particles are themselves large enough and they have high molecular masses, and most of the lyophilic salts are macromolecular colloids. And examples are starch, proteins, gelatin, cellulose, nucleic acid, etc. They are the macromolecules. That means they have large molecular masses and they are themselves large enough to fall in the range of 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer, which is required for colloidal particles. Next is associated colloids, or which are also known as Michels. Associated colloids are those colloids which behave as normal strong electrolytes at low concentration, but they show colloidal properties at higher concentration due to the formation of aggregate particles. The aggregate particles thus formed are called Michels. Okay. Now, methods of preparation of colloidal solutions. Actually, there are two methods of preparation of lyophobic colloids. The first one is dispersion medium, next is condensation medium. First is dispersion method, next is condensation method. Now, let's have a look at dispersion methods. Actually, in dispersion methods, the bigger particles of any substance are broken down into small particles. Dispersion simply refers to breaking down of the particles. So in this method, actually big particles are broken down into small particles of colloidal size. The smaller particles thus obtained are stabilized by adding some stabilizing agent. While in condensation method, some chemical reactions may be used to aggregate small particles of atomic or ionic sizes, small particles, small atoms or ions, to form large particles of colloidal dimension. The dispersion phase are formed as insoluble reactant products. What is the basic difference between these two? In short, I can say that in this one, okay, in order to form a colloidal solution, the size of particle must be 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. Okay, we have a large particle which is larger than this range, so we will break it down using dispersion medium into the small particles which fall in this range. While in condensation method, we have very small particles which are even smaller than 1 nanometer. So we will do some chemical reactions to group them together to form a large particle of which falls in this range. The first one is actually process of breaking down. The second one is process of joining particles together. So this is the basic difference between these two. Okay. Now Let's have a deep study of dispersion method. The first one is mechanical dispersion method, in which the large particles are broken down into small colloidal sized particles by mechanical methods. Like we use colloid mills, and which has two heavy wheels, discs separated by a little gap, and which is moved using a belt, and then the mill is adjusted to break down the larger particles according to a desirable size. Okay, next is electrical dispersion medium, which is a method which is also known as Bragg arc method, and this is an important method actually. You can see here that what we have, a ice bath. We have a container which has ice, okay, and in this we have another container which contains actually the dispersion medium, which we need actually, the desirable dispersion medium. And why this ice? Because we have to keep the temperature of dispersion medium very low, and for this container containing dispersion medium is kept in a ice bath so that its temperature remains low. After that, let's say I have make the colloid of gold, or let's say silver. In that case, I'll use two silver electrodes, and if I have to make that of copper, I'll use two copper electrodes. If I have to make that of gold, I'll use two gold electrodes. So what is done actually? The two rods or electrodes of that metal, of which I have to prepare the colloidal solution, are immersed in dispersion medium, in which we have to make the colloidal solution, and then electricity is passed. Actually, high electrode potential is passed, because of which an sparking electric arc is generated at this site across the two electrodes, because of which actually the temperature keeps on increasing, and it becomes so high that these electrodes start melting, and actually not melting, they start vaporizing. The vapors are formed and they go into the dispersion medium. Because dispersion medium is very cool, because of this ice bath, they condense there into the particles of colloidal size, and this is the way the colloidal soul is formed. So this method is used for preparation of souls of metals such as gold, silver, platinum, etc. Two electrodes of the metals whose soul is to be prepared are immersed into dispersion medium, and an electric arc is produced by passing high voltage current. The dispersion medium is cooled by surrounding it with freezing mixture. Due to the heat produced from electric arc, the metals start vaporizing, and the vapors condense into cooled dispersion medium to form the particles of colloidal size on cooling. Next is peptization. Now, peptization is the method of breaking down freshly prepared precipitate particles into particles of colloidal size, and this is done by adding suitable electrolyte. The electrolyte added is called peptizing agent. So what is peptizing agent? Basically, peptizing agent, first of all, what is peptization? So we prepare a freshly prepared precipitate which is of larger size and visible by eye, and then we add some electrolyte into that precipitate so that that precipitate breaks down into small particles of colloidal size. And the example is actually brown colored colloidal solution is obtained by addition of ferric chloride solution into freshly prepared ferric hydroxide. Okay, we have freshly prepared, let's say, ferric hydroxide particles, FeOH negative. Oh, okay, FeOH3. We have ferric hydroxide, and in this we add actually ferric chloride. So okay, then what happens? What happens that adsorption of ferric ion on the surface of precipitate. We have FeOH3 precipitate, then we have added FeCl3 which contains Fe3 positive ion, and these Fe3 positive ions get adsorbed on the surface of the precipitate ferric hydroxide, and these all ferric ions are positively charged, because of which they start repelling one another on the surface of precipitate, and eventually this precipitate gets broken into small pieces, which is of, yes, colloidal range. So accumulation of positively charged ferric ions on the surface causes repulsion between them, because of which the large particles break down into small particles of colloidal size. Okay, now purification of colloidal solution, and the first method is known as dialysis. Now dialysis is the process of separating the impurity particles of the true solution dimensions from an impure solution by means of diffusion through a suitable membrane, such as, yes, this is a special type of paper, parchment paper or cellophane membrane is called dialysis. So what we do, it is simply we can say filtering out the impurities which are of very small size as compared to the colloidal particles. That means colloidal particles are in the range 1 nanometer to 1000 nanometer. If the impurity is smaller than 1 nanometer, it can simply be filtered out using this method, dialysis, using cellophane membrane or this paper, parchment paper. So this is basically dialysis. You can see here, this is dialytic membrane, which is basically cellophane or parchment paper. It contains crystalloids, or we can say impurity, along with the colloids also. Actually, what are colloids and what are crystalloids? Colloids are basically, we can say that, okay, we know what are colloids. Colloids are the particles of this range, and crystalloids are those particles which are smaller than this, or we can say them true solutions also. So we have a membrane, and with the passage of time, what happens that these crystalloids diffuse out through this membrane, and which results behind pure colloidal solution. This is dialysis, and actually this used, and the apparatus used in this method is called dialyzer. It consists of bag made up of cellophane or that paper. The bag is filled with impure sol to be purified. It's suspended in a tank through which pure water is circulated. The impurities of electrolytes present in the sol diffuse out of the bag, leaving behind pure sols in the bag. Okay, now we have electrodialysis. Actually, we know that dialysis is a very slow process, as it can be observed, it can be understood easily. It is a slow process. So we use two electrodes to accelerate the process, and it is known as electrodialysis. And this is based on the fact that all the colloid particles are actually charged. They have either positive charge or they have either negative charge. So dialysis is a slow process. However, it can be the speed can be increased by applying the electric field. Under the influence of electric field, the impurity ions move faster to the oppositely charged electrodes, and process gets faster, or it gets increased. The process is referred as electrodialysis, and this is the method we have. It is the apparatus is same as that we used in case of dialysis. The difference is that now we are using two electrodes, cathodes and anodes. Another method is ultrafiltration. The pores of an ordinary filter paper are large enough to allow the passage of both impurity as well as colloidal particles, and therefore an ordinary filter paper cannot be used for removing the impurities of electrolyte from an impure sol. However, if the pores of ordinary filter paper is reduced, it can be used for separating the impurities from the impure sols, and this is achieved by treating an ordinary filter paper with actually gelatin, followed by its hardening by dipping it in formaldehyde solution. And this treatment reduces the pore size and enables it to check the passage of colloidal particles through it. Filter papers thus obtained are called ultrafilters, and filtration through ultrafilter is known as ultrafiltration. Okay, Tyndall effect. Actually, you must have observed light coming in a dark room. If you are able to observe that somehow, you will see that if there is a dark room and from window the light is coming into that dark room, you can simply observe actually dust particles moving through that a light in the path of that light like this. Let's say it is a window, and if light is coming in this way in a dark room, you will find particles moving in that light, and this is the Tyndall effect actually. When an intense converging beam of light is passed through the colloidal solution kept in dark, the path of beam gets illuminated with bluish light, and this is known as Tyndall effect, and this Tyndall effect is due to scattering of light by colloidal particles. Since dimension of colloidal particles are comparable to the wavelength of ultraviolet and visible radiation, they scatter these radiations and get illuminated. Now the question comes that why it happens only with, okay, if I have a solution which is actually colloidal solution, and if I pass the beam of light, I can easily observe the colloidal particles moving through the path of this beam. Why? Because actually these colloidal particles scatter the lights, light which comes in contact with these colloidal particle. Now the question comes, why only colloidal particles scatter the light and not the suspension or the solution particles? Then the answer is that if a particle has to scatter any radiation, its size must be comparable with the wavelength of that radiation. In only that case the particle would be able to scatter that radiation, and this happens in case of colloidal particles. The size of colloidal particles are actually comparable with the wavelength of the light, and that is why these particles easily scatter the light and the path becomes visible. Okay. Next is Brownian movement. Actually what happens that it is observed under microscope that the particles of colloidal are always under zigzag motion. They keep on moving in random direction. So colloidal particles present in colloidal solution exhibit a very important property called Brownian motion. When colloidal solutions is viewed under ultra microscope, the colloidal particles are seen continuously moving in zigzag path, and this is known as Brownian movement. The Brownian movement is basically due to unequal bombardment of the moving molecules of dispersion medium on colloidal particles, and the moving molecules of the dispersion medium continuously attack on colloidal particles from all the sides and impart movement into them. So what is the basic reason for Brownian movement is the collision between the molecules of dispersion phase, that means dispersed phase, that means colloidal particles, and the molecules of dispersion medium. They all keep on colliding, and because of which the colloidal particles are always under zigzag motion, and this is known as Brownian motion. And the Brownian motion is actually important for the stability of colloids. We know colloid particles are of larger size, but even that, after that, they do not settle down under the influence of gravity, because actually the zigzag Brownian motion does not allow them to settle down. Now properties of colloid, first of all, charged on colloids. I have just discussed that all the colloid particles are charged. The colloidal particles possess definite type of electric charge. All the colloidal particles carry some type of charge, while the dispersion medium has an equal but opposite charge. If the colloidal particles are positively charged, the dispersion medium will be negatively charged. Thus, the charge on colloidal particles is balanced by that of dispersion medium, and the colloidal solution as whole is electrically neutral. For example, in ferric hydroxide salt, the colloidal ferric hydroxide particles are positively charged, while the dispersion medium carries equal and opposite negative charge. The stability of colloidal particle solution is mainly due to the presence of particular type of charge on all the colloidal particles present in it. Due to the presence of similar and equal charges, the colloidal particles repel one another, and thus they are unable to combine together to form large particles, and that is why they are smaller in size always, and they remain suspended. They do not settle down under the influence of gravity. This keeps them dispersed in the medium, and the colloidal particles remains stable. This is why salt particles do not settle down even after standing for a longer time. Now there are two type of basic souls on the basis of charge: positively charged souls and negatively charged souls. So positively charged souls are all the metal hydroxides. Apart from that, hemoglobin, souls of basic dyes such as methylene, blue, etc. are positively charged, while negatively charged souls are basically metal souls, metal hydroxide souls positively, metal souls negative. Okay, now electrophoresis is an important property of colloids. We know that colloids are positively charged, either they are positively charged or they are negatively charged. So they have a special tendency to move under the influence of electric field toward either of the two electrodes, and the smaller the size, more would be the distance moved by the colloidal particle toward the electrode. Electrophoresis is the movement of colloidal particles toward the particular electrode and under the influence of electric field, and due to the presence of particular type of electric charge, the colloidal particles present in the colloidal dispersion move toward particular electrode under the influence of an electric field, and the direction of movement of colloidal particles is decided by the nature of charge present on them very obviously, and this property can be used to find out the nature of charge carried by colloidal particles in the colloidal dispersion. Electrophoresis is an important phenomena and finds several applications in industry. Next property is coagulation or flocculation. Now what is this? In this phenomena, it is the phenomena involving precipitation of colloidal solution on addition of an electrolyte. We have just studied in earlier slides also that a colloid can be precipitated when an electrolyte is added. Okay, we have studied that precipitates are converted into electrolytes. Actually, precipitates are converted into colloids by adding electrolytes. This is inverse of that. The colloids are converted into precipitate by addition of electrolyte. So if we add suitable electrolyte to precipitate, it will convert into colloid, and if we add suitable electrolyte to the colloid, it will convert into precipitate. So this is the phenomena of precipitation of colloidal solution on addition of electrolytes. Actually what happens that due to similar charges, we know that colloidal particles are charged and they all possess similar type of charge. So due to similar charge, colloidal particles repel one another and thus they do not come together to combine. And if somehow we make it possible to come all the colloidal particles together to combine to form larger size particle, they will convert into precipitate. And this is done by neutralizing the charge over this colloidal particle, which is achieved by adding the suitable electrolyte which has opposite charge to that of colloidal particles. However, if the charge on the colloidal particles are destroyed, they are free to come nearer and grow in size, and thus when the particle becomes sufficiently charged, they get precipitated. And there is a rule which is known as, you can say here, Hartley-Schulz's rule. Hartley-Schulz's rule, which says that greater is the valence of oppositely charged ion of an electrolyte added to the colloidal solution, faster is the precipitation or coagulation of the colloidal solution. We have studied that colloidal particles are precipitated by addition of electrolyte. Now this rate of precipitation, okay, the first thing is that the electrolyte which is added must contain opposite charge as compared to the colloidal particles. Second thing is that greater the charge on electrolyte or greater the valency of electrolyte, faster would be the coagulation process. That in the ion responsible for causing coagulation is one which carries charge opposite to that present in colloidal particle. For example, positively charged souls gets coagulated by negatively charged ions of the added electrolyte. Okay, so just like this, according to this rule, higher the charge on oppositely charged ion, greater is the coagulation power. For example, the coagulation power of different cations for coagulating a negatively charged soul of this is like this. Al 3 positive, higher coagulating power, followed by 2 positive ion, followed by 1 positive ion, and similar is the case in case of negative ions also. Greater the charge, more would be its coagulating power. Okay, another thing is coagulating value or flocculation value, which says actually the coagulation power of an electrolyte is usually expressed in the terms of its flocculation value, which may be defined as the minimum concentration in mole per liter of an electrolyte required to cause the coagulation of a sol. Protective colloids and gold number actually. Lyophobic sols such as those of metals are not very stable. We have discussed this already. And that is in the sense that they get easily coagulated in the presence of an electrolyte. This poses a big problem in their storage and uses. Okay, now in opposite to this, lyophilic sols are much more stable and they do not get coagulated easily under similar conditions. It has been observed that in the presence of certain lyophilic colloids such as gum, arabic, gelatin, starch, etc., hydrophobic sols acquire greater stability toward the coagulation. That means they get protected and do not get coagulated easily. That means in short I can say lyophobic sols less stable, lyophilic sols more stable. But it has been observed that once some lyophilic sol is added to lyophobic sol, the stability of lyophobic cell also get increases. That means we can say that lyophilic sols protect the lyophobic sol from coagulation. Now the process of protecting a lyophobic sol from being coagulated on addition of an electrolyte by the use of lyophilic colloids is called protection, and the lyophobic colloid used for this purpose is called protective colloid. For example, the addition of gelatin, which is a lyophilic colloid, to a gold sol, which is lyophobic sol, protects the lyophobic sol from being coagulated on addition of sodium chloride. That means the stability of lyophobic sols can be increased by adding lyophilic sol. Now there is a term gold number. Actually the gold number of a protective colloid is the minimum amount in milligram which is just sufficient to prevent the coagulation of 10 ml of gold sol in the addition of 1 ml of 10% sodium chloride solution. Smaller the value of gold number, greater is the protective power or of the protective colloid. Now there is a solved problem. Which of the following alternatives represent the correct order of coagulation power of the ions? We have just studied that greater the valency, greater the charge of an ion, more would be its coagulation power. So actually the correct order is this: 3 positive, then 2 positive, and then unipositive. So D is the correct option for this question. Next is, when an intense converging beam of light is passed through the colloidal solution kept in dark, the path of the beam gets illuminated with a bluish light, and this phenomena is called Tyndall effect. A is the correct option. Next one is, which of the following alternatives does not form a positively charged sol? So we know that metal oxides and metal hydroxides form positively charged sols and metals form negatively charged forms. So C, D is the correct option. Copper will not form positively charged sol. So students, now we are aware of colloidal solutions, their properties, preparation. We know what is peptidization. We know that what are the uses of colloids. Actually colloids are very useful in as a medicines. Number of medicines are nothing but colloidal solutions which we take to cure our diseases. Okay, in next video we'll move to emulsions, which are special type of colloids. Stay tuned.